What does true leadership really demand? Especially when you're trying to steer a whole nation and things are tough and the pressure, well, it's immense. It's so easy for us looking from the outside to judge, isn't it? To critique every little thing. But do we ever really get what that's like? The lived experience. Today, we're taking a deep dive into exactly that, the complex, often tough realities of leadership in Kenya. We'll look specifically through the lens of the recent presidencies. Our aim is to pull out some key lessons by comparing the challenges faced by those right at the top.
That's absolutely right. For this deep dive, we've gone through quite a range of recent materials, political analyses, commentaries, even some insider takes from people really plugged into Kenya's politics. And just to be clear, our mission here isn't about taking sides. We're not endorsing any specific view. What we want to do is shed light on just how complex and demanding this kind of high-stakes national leadership really is. We're hoping to draw out insights, that help us understand the real nature of power and, frankly, its burdens.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We sometimes hear people talk casually about being president like it's, I don't know, just a powerful office, lots of perks. But the insights we looked at, they just shatter that idea straight away. They say leadership, especially a presidency, goes way beyond just sitting in the office, taking tea or making noise on top of vehicles. It's huge, all-encompassing.
It absolutely is. And the materials really stress that true leadership, especially at that level, it kind of has to transcend public opinion. It goes, as they put it, beyond what people say, beyond what you say, beyond what you think, and beyond what the people think about you. It's a heavy weight to carry, almost solitary sometimes, requires real foresight. And the core idea here, which I found fascinating, is that true leadership calls for wisdom.
Wisdom, okay?
Yeah, they even draw this parallel to the story of King Solomon in the Bible. Remember how he chose wisdom?
Right, over riches or power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knew wisdom was the foundation, the bedrock for governing well. Without it, all the wealth in the world wouldn't matter. It would just crumble.
And what's really striking is how the sources connect that ancient idea, that call for wisdom, to what's happening now. They point out a pretty stark contrast. They suggest the current regime seems more concerned about riches than how Kenya will be tomorrow, even saying they don't even care how others will live tomorrow. That's quite a statement, isn't it?
It really is. A powerful indictment.
It implies this focus on maybe short-term gains, perhaps even personal benefit over the long haul, the country's future. Makes you ask, where's that Solomonic wisdom now?
It does raise that question, and what adds weight to this are the observations we found about President William Ruto's current demeanor. The sources describe his facial expression and his general mood. They paint a picture of a man who is under deep stress.
Wow.
Yeah, even suggesting he looks like someone who has given up in this journey of presidency. The analogy they use is quite vivid. It's like a parent knowing their baby is in pain. The baby can't say, "I hurt," right? But the parent sees it in the tiny frown, the way the face tightens. They learn to read those signs. In the same way, the source suggests President Ruto's public face is showing this deep internal struggle, a weariness beyond just the usual political heat.
And it's not just reading expressions. The source actually quotes President Ruto making a pretty significant statement. He apparently said, "I am ready to get out of power if those opposing you have a plan."
That exact statement. And as the source highlights, it immediately flips the script, raises this really sharp question. Okay, but does the current leadership actually have a solid plan for governing Kenya?
Right. The criticism is right there.
It is. The materials argue pretty strongly that you cannot replace a plan that is working that you don't like with no plan. It even accuses the leadership of being armed with hate and violence, but lacking a clear strategy, a roadmap for the country.
That's serious stuff.
It absolutely is, with real consequences. And this brings us, and you listening, to a crucial point. What does it actually take to lead a nation through difficulties? Is it just having the power? Or is it about having a clear, workable, long-term vision that goes beyond the day-to-day political fights?
That idea of perspective, how it shifts when you move from the sidelines, that's really key. And it leads us straight into this fascinating comparison the sources draw. The challenges President Ruto is facing now, they seem to echo, almost uncannily, what former President Uhuru Kenyatta went through back in 2017.
Yes, the parallels are quite striking when you look at them. The materials really detail Kenyatta's situation after the Supreme Court nullified the 2017 election results.
Which is unprecedented.
Really unprecedented, a huge moment for Kenya. And Kenyatta, even though he was president, found himself under just immense pressure. The source describes how he essentially gave up, said he never wanted to participate for a fresh election. Yeah, because the political climate, especially the opposition led by Raila Odinga, the protests,
Yeah.
it all became too much. He apparently reached a point thinking, I can't handle this, and even talked about wanting to step down and go to Ikowere, his rural home.
Wow, wanting to escape it all.
It suggests this profound exhaustion, right? A desire to just get away from the political battlefield. It shows a leader really pushed to the brink where power itself lost its appeal under that kind of intense pressure.
And the really captivating part is bringing in William Ruto's perspective from that exact moment. The source paints him as a spectator back then, watching all this unfold. And from where he stood, he apparently couldn't understand the pressure, couldn't grasp the whole environment Kenyatta was stuck in.
Right.
He's watching Kenyatta struggle, apparently wondering why on earth anyone would ever think about giving up that kind of power. Thinking, as the source puts it, that power is so sweet.
It's almost like he couldn't imagine the real weight of it until it landed on his own shoulders.
Exactly. Which highlights this dramatic irony the materials point out.
Ruto, back then, just didn't have the knowledge you only get from actually being in that field.
You have to live it.
You really do. He hadn't felt those unique personal challenges of being president himself. He hadn't truly felt the force, the power of the opposition when it's aimed squarely at you.
Yeah.
He was watching, sure, and closely involved, but still fundamentally detached from the emotional, the psychological toll that leadership takes in those specific high-pressure moments. It was theoretical for him then.
Which brings us perfectly to this analogy the source uses. It's quite good, actually.
Yeah.
The football fan versus the player.
Yes, that one.
Imagine that fan, right? Up in the stands, shouting instructions, totally convinced they know best. Shoot, pass it there. What are you doing?
You've all seen them. Or maybe been them.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But then you put that same fan on the pitch, ball at their feet, defenders closing in, the crowd noise. Suddenly, maybe they can barely even kick the ball straight, let alone pull off that amazing play they were demanding.
The perspective just completely flips.
Entirely.
And the materials apply this analogy so directly, so powerfully to Ruto. William Ruto, who was once that passionate spectator watching Kenyatta, well, now he's the player in the field, no question about it.
He's in the thick of it.
Absolutely. He's now able to understand the pressure, not just think about it, but feel it viscerally. He's facing very similar challenges, maybe even just as intense. For instance, pressure from within his own coalition, like with Rigathi Gachagua. Those political dynamics, the internal heat, much like Kenyatta felt from Raila Odinga, that's his daily reality now. It's not something he's just watching anymore.
And it seems pretty clear now that President Ruto gets the huge difficulty, the sheer complexity of trying to revive Kenya's economy.
Yeah.
Just like Kenyatta was grappling with during his time.
Yeah.
This isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet anymore, is it?
Yeah.
It's navigating global issues, trying to stabilize the currency, tackling youth unemployment, managing the cost of living that hits every single household.
That's real immediate.
It's not a theoretical problem now. It's the defining reality of his presidency, deeply felt.
And this leads us right to the core lesson the sources seem to pull out of all this. President Ruto has, you could say, reached this point where he finally understands exactly why Uhuru Kenyatta might have wanted out back in 2017.
He gets it now.
He gets it. He realizes now how simple things can look from the outside, how easy it is to misjudge the complexities, the internal battles, the crushing weight of that office until you're the one carrying it.
Which really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How does that direct, on-the-ground experience fundamentally change how someone sees leadership?
Yeah.
Especially when the stakes are so incredibly high, like running an entire country.
It's a profound shift.
So if we boil it down, the key takeaways from our deep dive today seem to be this. Leadership, especially at the very top, is just so much more intricate, so much more demanding and psychologically taxing than it ever looks from the outside. It's not just about policy smarts or being politically savvy. It demands deep wisdom, incredible resilience, and this really deep, often painful understanding of all the pressures, inside and out. And this burden, as we've seen, it often leads to intense stress, real isolation, and sometimes like this actual desire to just walk away from power.
Indeed. And what's really quite fascinating is seeing how both President Ruto and former President Kenyatta, despite coming from different political paths, having different styles, they seem to have landed on this same shared experience, this overwhelming weight of the presidency.
Yeah, that's striking.
It really highlights that no matter who holds that office, the inherent pressures, the unique challenges, They're constant. They shape and often really change the person in the seat. It speaks volumes about how isolating, how tough that top job really is.
It really does. And it leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on. Something the source material kind of hints at. What does it actually mean for the country when its leaders are under such intense pressure, internal and external, that they might even wish they could quit? And given these huge, almost unbearable realities of the job, will Kenya ever find a leader that truly satisfies all its citizens? Or is this cycle of high hopes followed by, well, maybe disillusionment, just an inevitable part of holding that office? Something to definitely ponder as you reflect on what we've discussed today about the true cost of leading a nation.